What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today I thought we could revisit the We Knife RekkeR, which was designed by Kyle Lamb, and I recently took a look at this one in the Going Gear subscription that it came in, and alongside the QSP Ripley. Since then I've had a chance to carry both of them, cut with them, and honestly it's really improved my outlook on that month's subscription overall, which I already thought was pretty solid, but I've really been enjoying these two knives quite a bit, and so really upped my ranking from solid to a good or even a great month overall from Going Gear. And so one of the things I like about these subscriptions is that they often send you stuff that maybe you wouldn't have purchased yourself. Now that could be a good thing or it could be a very bad thing if it goes wrong. In this case I think it's a really good thing because I was pleasantly surprised by this knife. This is definitely one of those knives that I wouldn't have picked up otherwise. First, because it's a We. I don't have any problem with We. I just don't follow along that closely with their different models. They release so many I end up missing half of them, and so I don't even know that this would have ever been on my radar. And then it's not exactly my typical style of knife that I usually purchase, but that being said, I do think it's a great looking knife, and I think the configuration that I ended up getting in my box was the perfect one for me because blackwash is probably one of my favorite finishes on any knife, and it's really well executed here. So we have 20 CV on the blade, titanium handles. That blackwash is really well done on both. It's not like you get a two-tone because it's different metals. They're really well matched and just looks great overall. So big fan of that. I think the bronzed hardware really ties it all together nicely. You have the We pivot. I actually like the back pivot a little bit better because you see more of that bronze, but even with the hardware and the standoffs and all of that, have that bronze tying it all together nicely. The diamond pattern on the handles, I think, super solid. And the Reverse Tanto, it's probably not in my top 2 or 3 blade shapes, but can argue that it's a good looking blade shape, and I think it pairs really nicely with these handles, and so overall the aesthetics on this are super solid. Now there's only one area where the aesthetics maybe fall a little bit short for me, and that's with this flipper tab. So I'm kind of indifferent, I guess, when it's open. It doesn't look horrible, it doesn't look great, not really doing anything extra for me. In the closed position, for whatever reason, that kind of skeletonized look kind of looks a little bit cheap to me, which is a little bit of a bummer just because this knife has such a premium feel to it. I don't think I've mentioned the price yet. These are $216.75, which I think is a pretty solid value for what you're getting. Titanium handles, 20 CV, really well executed, excellent action, all good, all across the board for the most part. And so I think a really solid value, but that's the only area where it looks a little bit cheap to me, and I don't know what it is that makes it look cheap. There's nothing really wrong with it, and it's definitely unique and different. I also don't love it ergonomically because I'm someone who really likes to creep up as close to the blade as possible, as close to that cutting edge. And so when you do that with this one, you're getting real close to that cutting edge, especially with this super aggressive sharpening choil that kind of creates this backwards point that's pointing directly at my index finger. And so although it hasn't bit me yet, it's almost certainly to at some point. And so just kind of waiting for the day that that happens. But again, hasn't happened yet, so maybe I'm wrong there. But even if you stay off of that flipper tab, you have plenty of real estate for a full 4-finger grip on this one. 4.63 inches on the handle. You're losing about 3/4 of an inch here if you stay behind the flipper tab, but again, plenty of real estate for all 4 fingers. You can even spread out a little bit. Very, very comfortable. No hot spots whatsoever. And that is one thing that I had mentioned in the Going Gear video, is I was a little bit worried about that flipper tab being a sort of a hot spot because this jimping is extremely aggressive. It doesn't look like it, but it's super grabby, which makes it very easy to deploy. You always catch on that, and the detent is just about perfect. Cage ball bearings in there, and so really great action on there. But when you grab onto it in the open position, it almost always seems to grab my index finger. And I was a little bit worried that would be a hot spot. But honestly, even though it does still grab it as soon as I lock in, I don't feel it at all when I'm cutting with it. And so that was just a non-issue that I was worried about for no reason. And again, the ergos on this are really good. One thing that can be kind of a thing that gets to me sometimes is when you have forced finger positions with that interior grip. So you can see this really splits your index and ring finger, or your index and middle from your ring and pinky finger here, but it just happens to fit my hand perfectly. And so sometimes when it's forcing that split, you'll end up landing on top of that point, and that becomes a hot spot. But for my hand, that's not really at all in either position, whether I'm choked up onto that flipper tab or if I stay behind it. I'm really staying off of that point, and so it doesn't bother me whatsoever. The pocket clip disappears behind your knuckles just like it's supposed to. So ergos are great. No jimping on the spine of the knife here, but it doesn't really feel like you need it. You have this kind of ramp here, and you really do lock in very nicely on this knife. No matter where you end up grabbing, you don't really have a lot of slippage forward or backwards, so I don't feel like I'm missing that jimping all that much. Again, 20 CV on the blade. We have a 3.61 inch blade here. Reverse Tanto, flat grind, nice wedge here on the back. I think a really attractive looking blade there. Also, the factory edge on this was excellent. I don't know that I have enough We knives to say that they do a good job with their factory edge, but in this case, they did a really good job with the factory edge. On my particular model, I was pretty impressed with it. Super slicey out of the box, so really enjoyed that. We have a Framelock. I think I already mentioned the cage ball bearing, so really great action on the shed. Usually that flipper tab is gonna end up landing on my nail, and I can just either rotate it or shake it the rest of the way closed. If you go further down, you can get all completely out of the way and do it in one fluid motion there. And so really great action on here. Already mentioned that detent is perfect. We have a Framelock with a steel lock bar insert, and again, plenty of access to that. No jimping or anything like that. I don't like when there's jimping on the frame or liner lock. A lot of times, for whatever reason, that ends up feeling a little bit more aggressive and chewing up my fingers. So I do prefer no jimping on those as long as you have enough access, and really easy to get access to that lock bar, so that works well as well. Got a deep carry pocket clip that isn't reversible, but they ship a second left-handed pocket clip with it. So we got this titanium pocket clip, and I actually really like this. It slides into the pocket really nicely. It's a pretty solid looking design overall. Maybe not my favorite looking design, but it just works well. It's deep carry and it slides into the pocket easy. Also nice and stout, but easy to get in and out of the pocket. So no complaints with the pocket clip. And it is nice that you do get the left-handed pocket clip. This is one that's a little bit weird because of Framelock. You only have the pattern on the one side, so a little bit weird for a lefty clip here. It almost would have been better to get a full lefty model, but not going to complain about a company kind of accommodating both hands when so many companies skip out on that. We do have a really well placed lanyard hole. I love when the lanyard hole is kind of back here on the back rather than straight on the bottom. I think just a better placement overall. A little bit narrow, so you might have to flatten out that paracord to get it through there, but should fit in the end. Overall, I've really enjoyed this knife. Like I've said, it's a little bit on the heavier side at 3.48 ounces, but that's pretty, I guess, typical for a knife that's 8.24 inches overall. That's not super heavy, but it is a little bit heavy overall in the pocket. Doesn't feel it at all in hand. It actually feels really light in hand, deceivingly light, a lot lighter than 3.48 ounces. So great balance on this and feels super light in the hand, so really well distributed. But just being a bigger knife, of course, it weighs a little bit more. But have been very happy with this design. I'm really glad they ended up sending this in there. Again, a bunch of different configurations. I'm not going to list them all off. Check out the website to see which ones they come in, or just check out some of those Going Gear videos. I know Skibby got one with gold accents across that diamond pattern, and there's some with satin blades and stuff like that. So if this black wash really isn't your thing, you do have some other options, and I'll make sure to link to some of those in the description below. But thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, joining the channel as a member. All help the channel out a ton, and as always, hope you have a great one. Take care.